Welcome back to Delicious and Nutritious. Here at Delicious and Nutritious, we use the best quality ingredients to cook the tastiest food. I am going to be your chef, Billy Lutz. So today what we are going to get after is the start of what is going to be some of your guys' favorite things in the world. They are going to be healthy desserts. Yes, I said it, healthy desserts. Desserts that I am even comfortable recommending that you could eat them in the morning for breakfast. I know that sounds crazy, but once you start seeing how we manipulate desserts, we really start to refine how we think about what ingredients are going in there. We're not using flour and sugar that's going to translate into a blood spike in your bloodstream. We are now using good quality, high micronutrients, good quality nutrients, macronutrients, balancing everything out, and additionally, most of the time they are relatively lower on the end of sugar, and if it does come from sugar, it's also accompanied with high mineral content and fats that are going to help the sugars digest slower to hit our bloodstream at a whole lot more even pace. So today what we're going to do, are you guys ready for this? We are getting into avocado key lime pie recipes. They're going to be cupcakes and they are no bake, so we do not need to bake these. So if you guys are like, I don't bake, I don't like to bake, you don't need to bake anything. So today what we're gonna do is we're gonna need some ingredients, obviously. So we have two steps that are gonna go down in this process. Number one, we have to make the crust. The reason why we have to make the crust first is because it has to start freezing while we then make the filling, because the crust needs to freeze, and then we need to also have that. So first thing I'm gonna recommend for you guys is, before I get into the ingredients, is a silicone cupcake tray. I don't recommend cooking in this, but this is amazing for this recipe, and they're not very expensive. I think this was like $12 on Amazon. You guys will see when we're done, and you can just squeeze basically and manipulate this to get the cupcakes out. So that is going to be a recommendation I have, not very expensive. If you don't have it, what I would suggest doing is using this brand. So this is going to be If You Care. Absolutely love these. These are going to be cupcake fillers. They are a really conscious company. Yes, they are more expensive, as most of the things that are conscious are right now, because we don't have as high of demand for them. But as we keep making these decisions, it's going to start driving the price down, because the companies are going to be able to get bigger and produce them more efficiently. This recipe is going to be from Dr. Jockers. It will obviously be in the description and the pinned comments below. So if you want to see the whole recipe, I'm going to be modifying it. I am doing it slightly different than they do. So let's get into the ingredients right now. So we have 1 cup of sprouted sunflower seeds, 1 cup of sprouted pumpkin seeds. And some of you guys may be like, what does sprouted mean? Maybe you've never heard of that before. So sprouting basically, and we're going to use walnuts today. So for me, I'm going to go with 2 cups of walnuts. If you don't like walnuts or you're allergic to, you can manipulate the nuts. You can use what Dr. Jockers recommends. I really like this. So a sprouting process is you put the nuts, or whatever you're doing, rice, you put it into water, then you're gonna let it soak. Typically you let it soak for a couple hours. Sometimes I let it soak overnight. Some of you guys may have eaten walnuts before and you kind of get that gritty, weird taste in your mouth. This process is going to eliminate that. Some of the nuts that I recommend doing it, obviously you can do sunflower seeds and pumpkin seeds, but bigger hitters for me are going to be walnuts as well as pecans. Pecans and walnuts, when you do it, some of you guys be like, does that manipulate the taste? It does a little bit, but it actually makes them taste more appeasing to the body. Think about it as a sprouting process. If the seed needs to survive, right, it needs to have protective mechanisms against itself so that animals don't eat it, so it can keep its species going onwards. So the sprouting process in this, it actually has anti-nutrient properties until it becomes sprouted. Once you sprout it, it unlocks all those nutrients to be available for your body. So soaking it is going to unlock those things for you guys, because think about it in the nature, as soon as it goes into the soil, it starts getting some water, then it's like, okay, we can start sprouting, we're safe, and then it's gonna let out all of the nutrients that are gonna help grow that plant nice and strong. So in order to sprout it is all you do, like I said, you put it in water, soak it all the way, preferably, in my case, only am I going to use filtered water, because then that's gonna go into this, so absolutely must RO filter water at a minimum. And then you're gonna put it, you can do it in your oven, or if you have a different thing, you can use it in a dehydrator. That's gonna be the best case scenario at about 105 to 110 degrees until they're dried out. So you're gonna wanna check them, but if you do it in the oven, most ovens don't go down that low. They'll go to about 140 degrees. In that case, what I do is I leave the door slightly cracked and I come back and I check quite frequently, because I'm not trying to cook it. The goal is not to cook it, it's to hydrate it, let it unlock its nutrient properties, wash away all those anti-nutrient properties, and then put it in the oven, and come back. So you're gonna have to come back. I do it quite frequently, but that's a really good process for this. And it also makes the nuts become a whole lot more tastier and appeasing to our palates, as opposed to having that weird, gritty, you've had it when you've tasted some walnuts or some pecans in the past. And then we're gonna need 4 to 5 dates. I choose medjool dates. They have a really high mineral content. So when you get this type of natural sugar, it's going to be accompanied by a lot of minerals. We're gonna need 8 tablespoons of coconut oil. I always use, when I'm cooking, I'm gonna use refined when I'm cooking there, but if you want a little bit more coconut taste, you can use unrefined here because we're not cooking with it. This is gonna be a no bake, but you are gonna have to slightly liquefy it. I have mine in the oven right now, or you can take out what you want and then you can cook it in a pan. Not really cook it, but heat it up enough just to get you there. And then finally, a teaspoon of salt. So that's gonna be for the crust. And as far as the filling goes, I have 3 avocados right here. It's calling for 1. You can choose what you do want. So I am going to do probably 2 avocados and then see how much it's going to produce, because I kind of like a little bit more of the filling than it is compared to the crust. This recipe is asking for a can of coconut milk. I would suggest not doing it from the carton. I would get a can of it. If you look for it, there's Whole Foods brands that are organic, and then they also have another brand as well. I think it's Nature something or the other. Those are much thicker. They're gonna work a lot better in here. I'm gonna do oat milk if I choose to use milk. I'm gonna go in with just the avocados and the limes, and if I need a little bit extra just to kind of mix it up, we'll do that. I'm just not eating coconut milk right now. I've eaten too much of it, and sometimes when you eat too much of one thing, you become a little bit intolerant to it. So I'm slightly intolerant to coconut milk. So that's why it's always important to switch up everything you're doing and not eat something specific on a daily basis, because it can bring about intolerances. And then this recipe, there's 2 things you can do. If you guys are keto out there, you can do stevia. It says 10 drops, or you can do organic monk fruit. This is gonna be monk fruit. I do like this one. A little bit better than stevia for me personally. Or if you're not going keto, you can do maple syrup. So the maple syrup is going to be, they used to have grade A and grade B. They've washed that away. Grade B was, it's going to have higher mineral content and less sugar. Grade A was a lot more sugar, and you can tell by the color. So what I do, whenever I'm in the Whole Foods or wherever I'm at buying it, I look for the darkest color. It's going to say grade A maple syrup, very dark color, strong taste. So that's what I'm looking for right here when I'm looking for that. My purpose is to find the darkest color that I can find. That means that it has the highest dose of minerals in it, which is important, and it's gonna be the less sugar-induced type of maple syrup. So those are options for you guys. I would say if you're using the monk fruit or the stevia, having the milk is gonna be important, but if you're going to use some maple syrup, it may not be important. And then also, ideally, we would have a food processor. I'm going to be getting mine very soon. I don't have it yet, but I can also use a blender. Not the most ideal, but the food processor really works those dates and the crust together. So let's jump right into the recipe. I'm excited to do this with you guys. And then obviously, speaking, I don't think I need to keep on telling you guys, but organic as much as possible. And then finally, one last ingredient I didn't mention is gonna be cinnamon. I love cinnamon. I'm going to put this in the crust. It is not mentioned here. So cinnamon for me is going into the crust. I think it brings about quite a delightful flavor. And the last ingredient is obviously going to be limes. We need our limes. So I have little baby limes here. Limes can get quite big. So this is calling for the juice and also the zest. So zest is if you have this type of grater. So this is gonna be big grade. Zest is basically you use the skin and you go here. That's why organic is very important right now, because we're gonna be eating the rind in this one. If you don't want to zest, another alternative is going to be using an essential oil, organic, steam distilled, please no chemicals, but if it's an organic process, it's not gonna have chemicals, because the essential oils do not come from the inside. They actually come from squeezing the skin. So if you don't wanna have the rinds in there and everything like that, it doesn't really put rinds in there, but if you don't wanna go through this whole process, even though it is a cool process and it actually helps utilize more of this, the essential oils come from squeezing the skin. So an essential oil substitute, if you're in a time crunch or you don't have this available to you, is also an option. Here we go. We are now going to make the crust. I'm telling you, the food processor is a must. When we start cooking here, you guys are gonna see me using the food processor a lot. If you don't have one, I would suggest purchasing one if you're really gonna start following along properly with my recipes. We're gonna struggle through it together with a blender together today. It's gonna be a pulsing process. So we are going to take our nuts. So for this recipe, for me, I'm gonna do 1.5 cups. Like I said, please sprout these beforehand. Today, I am not going to, just based on time purposes. Sometimes I don't, but I'm telling you guys, when you start sprouting any type of nuts, it really takes everything up to the next level. It unlocks the nutrients, it makes them more bioavailable, If you ever get stomach aches maybe from nuts and you're not allergic to them, that could be one of the reasons why, is because you didn't sprout them and unlock the nutrient properties. And you can easily Google or find out how to sprout nuts. Super, super easy process. Then we're gonna go for the dates. We need pitted. I don't believe these are pitted. You can buy pitted ones, but if they're not, all you have to do is kind of just push them. We are going to need a total of 4 or 5. I'm gonna go with 5. Depends if you like it a little bit sweeter or if you do not. So I basically just press in there and pull them out. This is a very sticky process for sure. Medjool dates are considered a delicacy in a lot of places, to be forward with you guys. So they are really, really good quality. They are pretty sweet, so do be careful, but they're really tasty. And if you guys are seeing this, you're like, there's no way this is gonna mix. I totally agree with you. So it's requesting that we put in 8 tablespoons of coconut oil. So what I do is I just put this into the oven for a little bit. Be very careful taking it out, and the jar is a little bit hot right now, so I'm gonna go in with a little bit less than a half cup. 8 tablespoons is approximately a half cup, so I'm just gonna go ahead and pour that in there. And then we're gonna go here. The reason why I always start with a little bit less is because you can always add more after we start. Then we are going for the salt. Remember, Himalayan sea salt or gray salt are very important. The recipe recommends a teaspoon of that. I am just gonna go ahead and follow that because we do have sweetness. A little bit less than a teaspoon there. This one I'm using is gonna be gray salt. And then finally, we are looking for cinnamon. Remember, organic is very important. Do not let your spices be radiated. You wanna have completely organic spices as much as possible. I'm going with a half teaspoon here, a little bit less. I love cinnamon. I think it's great. I think it adds a little bit of graham cracker taste here. Also, what you can do, if you're trying to get a little bit different of a consistency, which you're gonna have to play with this, you can add a little bit of sprouted oats in here as well, which will really kind of give it a little bit different of a flavor. And remember, we're not cooking this. We are going to pulse blend this together. Hopefully it's gonna work out well with our Ninja right here. And then we are going to put it in there, and then we're gonna freeze it while we make the fillings, and then we're gonna come back. Everything's together. We have it in our blender. We're gonna wanna pulse this. So if you do need to pulse, what I suggest doing is grinding and then shaking. I'm telling you, the food processor, especially for this, is super important. Or else we're gonna, the goal is not to turn it into this liquid. We don't want it to be a liquid. We're gonna try our best not to get it into a liquid. You guys see, the food processor is gonna be the natural home remedy. So if we open this up right here, there we go. We got a little bit of blended. Good, that's really good. The cinnamon adds it to it. So looking right here, there you guys go. That's gonna be blended. That's a good consistency for me. I'm not really looking for it to be super, super blended because this could easily turn into a nut butter, easily. And since I don't have my food processor to pulse it, I'm gonna just stick with this right now. Next up, we're gonna need our silicone muffin tray. And we are going to scoop this into here, or you can just use your hands depending on whatever you prefer. All right, here we go. So remember, we have to get 12. So I just go through with a spoonful, and I'm gonna be here. Sometimes you guys may notice that there's a little bit of inconsistency in the sizing of the walnuts, and that is because we didn't use a food processor. So we can't get everything, and there's actually, one of the dates did not totally get ground up, but that's okay because we used a little bit extra. And so I tasted it and it still tasted fine. We went in with 5 dates, so I am okay that this particular date did not get all ground up. That's why I'm telling you guys the food processor, if at all costs you can use that, please do so. Or if you plan to make more desserts that are healthy with me in the future, you're gonna see me using the food processor a lot. You can make flowers with a food processor a whole lot easier. It's a really handy tool for natural dessert making. But I think it's kind of fun that we can make it together like this, because you can do it, even though you don't have everything you need, you can still make it work. And if you guys do want more crust, you can add a little bit more nuts in there if you prefer that. It's whatever you prefer. So we are now going to go here and push this down, kind of even out everything. If you guys do have a glass, an easy way to do this is to just use the other side of a glass and press this down. You do have to be careful though, because sometimes the glass can stick the mixture to it. So it's all how you want to do it. So we're gonna want to even this out all the way around. You can also sub pecans in here if you'd rather use pecans, or you could follow Dr. Jocker's recipe and use the sprouted sunflower seeds and pumpkin seeds. I prefer just a little bit less crust. If you prefer a little bit more, you can go ahead and use 2 cups of walnuts, or you could also use 2 cups of pecans. Both work. Pecans obviously have a slightly different flavor. And some of you guys may be seeing this like, wow, it's a little bit liquidy. That's why this is no bake, because we're gonna put this in the freezer while we make the filling process. And we have everything pressed down. So you see here, a little bit bigger of a nut, and then here, that is what happens when you have to use a blender. The food processor gets a lot more of this circular motion, and it chops it a whole lot easier than does this. All right, number 1 is done right there. We have everything in, not super pretty. You can clean it up if you'd like. And we are gonna take this and put it straight into the freezer while we start up with the filling for the key lime part. Next, you guys ready for this? It's gonna be super easy. You guys are gonna be blown away by how easy this recipe is, because that was already the crust. The crust is done. It's freezing in the process. I just wanted to reinforce that if you are not using a silicone cupcake tray, you need to use the cupcake sheets, because if you're putting it into a hard one, there's no way that you're gonna be able to get these out once they freeze in there. So you have to use the baking cups, and you're gonna need the large ones. And this is gonna be the brand If You Care. I love this brand. They do great work. And if you guys wanna read about how they source all the sustainability, and when I think about this, when I read the sustainability facts, and I think about, okay, if they're doing this, that means the other companies are doing the opposite of that. I'm gonna give you one fact, that they're certifying all from FSC certified forests, meaning that they're not cutting down fresh trees in forests to make these. So if that's what they're doing here and doing it from certified forests that are sustainable, they're not doing that from the regular ones. They're cutting down uncut trees, and they're deforesting specific areas to make paper products, which I'm totally not okay with supporting. All right, let's get down. 2 avocados I'm going with. I want a little bit more. Remember, you want to have the avocados to be a little bit pushed in. You see these ones? Can push in there. These guys are ready to go. Remember, go around once and go around twice. You don't need to do all that, cut it in half and then stick a knife in it. All you gotta do is peel it and break it to the side, and you have easy avocados going right into the blender right there. These ones are perfect. They come right out. They're not leaving any remnants in the peel, just a little bit there. You could just use your thumb, get that out. That's how you cut an avocado. Super easy. I see all these people, and you want to take the pits out right up front, which I didn't do right there. Just grab this pit, take it, and then you're just gonna go ahead. I guess it's not considered a pit technically. I don't know what that is. It's the little top knot of the avocado. Really easy to do these avocados like this. Yes, your hands do get a little dirty, but that is totally okay. And number 2, squeeze, perfect, avocado. I see so many things online of like, you gotta cut it in half and then you gotta stab the pit. It's the easiest way to do it, and I've never seen anybody do this before. Let me know if you guys have ever seen anybody break an avocado like this before. I have not, but how fast can you do 2 fully peeled avocados just like that? We have our 2 avocados sitting in the blender right now. Next is going to be the limes. So I have small limes here. It's calling for 2 juiced and zest. So I'm gonna go with 3. If you guys do have some type of fancy press, typically requires you just to cut it in half, and then you can put it in the press and then squeeze it. But we don't have that, so we're gonna do that in a different manner today. We're just gonna score it all the way around and through, just like this. Score, 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 score. I know it's not very official, but I want to make sure that you guys can still cook these recipes even if you don't have the tools needed. I don't want you guys to have a purchase barrier between you being healthy and making healthy treats when I'm telling you and recommending all these fancy tools that eventually cost money. And typically you want to have the higher quality ones because you really do get what you pay for, especially in cooking. So we are going to, I can just squeeze this right in here. I have a bowl right there, but I don't really need to do that. I'm gonna squeeze right in here. Super unofficial. There you go. And then you're gonna wanna save these because we're gonna zest them as well, or you can use the essential oil that we talked about. And there you have it. They are all juiced in there. And now we're gonna zest it. So we're gonna take our grater, and this is gonna be the smaller part, and we're just going to rub the peel over the top of it. Looks like I'm gonna have to go a little bit harder. Another way you could do this is before you cut this, you can zest and then cut it, which would also work. This is gonna add a lot more fragrance of the lime. If you want a little bit less of it, you can, but essentially we're putting essential oils into this food, which is what zesting is. And then so you see the zest coming through right there. Okay, so the easier way to do this would be if you don't cut it first and then you zest it first, is gonna make that process a whole lot easier. So please, while watching this, take from me struggling and learn from it. Look at the easiness of zesting this before you cut it. Look at that. This is gonna be what it looked like after it was cut. It's very difficult to hold. We can zest this entire thing before we cut it. Gives you a whole lot easier way of gripping it, more firmness. And then if you look right there, look at all that zest right there. And then we're just gonna want to get that into this recipe as well. So we have essential oils of limes, and we have the juice, which is going to be a very beneficial thing for our health right here. There we go. Now that we have this right here, you're gonna have to decide, are you going to go with the maple syrup or are you gonna go with the stevia? Maple syrup is gonna provide a whole lot more liquid to this, and that's gonna require basically little to no milk. But if you do want to do this, then you're gonna have to add in either an oat milk or you can add in a coconut milk, the canned coconut milk, which is a whole lot more fattier. It just depends how fatty you want this because avocados are already relatively fat in general. I really like the Pacific Foods as far as the organic oat milk. It doesn't have sugar in it, which is something that I look for. This one contains water, oats, sea salt, and a little bit of vanilla. So for this recipe, I'm gonna use an 1/8 cup, very minimal amount of maple syrup. Gonna go ahead and pour that in there. For all the keto people out there, you probably want to use a little bit less, or you wanna go with the stevia or the monk fruit. And then I am going to use about an 1/8 cup, and then we can check it out, and you can see how thick it is. I'm gonna go a little bit more, a little bit under 1/4 cup of the oat milk. And then we're gonna blend all of this together, which obviously you're gonna have to wash your blender in between. So once again, when using a smaller blender, you're gonna wanna finagle this a little bit. It's really a thick mixture. But that is what we are aiming for here. So if we take this out, ooh, look at that. That is pretty. That is the key lime pie winning recipe right there. And coming back, we now have our semi-frozen, look at that, it's already hard just by making this crust of the key lime pie. So now we are going to scoop each one in here. And I know you guys may be thinking, wow, it's kind of liquidy right now. As soon as you freeze this, it's gonna come out perfect, absolutely perfect. A nice size scoop for each of them, and then we can always go back and redistribute some more. I still am on my first thought that I could have used 3 whole avocados. This recipe was requiring more coconut milk, which I didn't use. I would rather have the avocados, but if you want to have the coconut milk, you can as well. So 3 whole avocados would be super perfect for this recipe. Still gonna come out good, but this recipe from when I originally had it has definitely been changed. Alrighty guys, this is now gonna go into the freezer. And we are officially finished right out of the freezer avocado key lime pies. So there you guys go. And the wonderful thing about using the silicone is all you have to do is peel it, and there you have it. An avocado key lime pie, absolutely delicious and nutritious. So ideally, to serve this, what you're gonna do, you leave it in the freezer until about 5 minutes before you're gonna serve it. Then you bring them out, you pop all of these out, and then you'll put them on a plate. You don't want them to unfreeze too much. So you have to be very delicate about when these are coming out and when they're serving, because like we talked about, we didn't bake these. They're not hard. They're literally just frozen. So delicious and nutritious. Super good. Wow. Really good mold of flavors. For me, if I wanted this a little bit sweeter, I would put a little bit more of the maple syrup in there. The 10 drops of stevia is very sweet. They're very concentrated. Maple syrup a little bit more. So for this recipe, I would probably put maybe a total of a 1/4 cup of maple syrup in all of these. And then I would put a little bit more milk or a little bit more avocado or both to really fill these things all the way to the top. But these things are super tasty. And just remember, you have to balance out the crust, which has the dates in it. That's gonna be really sweet. And the top, you don't want it to be overly sweet, but I think it could use a little bit more sweetness. But also, I did use the rinds of a lot more than 2 limes. So that also comes into effect. But these are really tasty, really good for you. And yes, you can eat them for breakfast. They have nuts, good quality fat, avocados. We have sea salt that's gonna give us minerals back. We have cinnamon that balances the blood sugar. And then we have limes, which are great for detoxification. Really, really good quality food. So thank you guys for taking some time out for cooking with me today. I'm excited to cook some more delicious and nutritious recipes with you guys so we can start changing the world one bite at a time.